So, welcome to Enigmatic Consciousness. Meow.
Me or the viewers? Because I'm very excited.
Both. You,
Yay!
you and the viewer and the version of you that will be viewing this at some point. Okay, so what should we chat about first?
Yeah, well, we could just start off where we left off
Where did we leave off?
with feelings, I guess.
Oh, with feelings. Okay. Yeah, so this is something that you and me both struggle with. Um, as much as we probably sound like well put together people on this show, we're really not, to be
Well,
honest
we're
about
human
it.
beings.
Yeah. Um, and we deal with our shit about as well as everybody else does. So yeah. So I don't know, like
Yeah,
where do we start with this, I guess?
I don't know. Um, I I haven't a clue.
You haven't a
Um,
clue. Okay, so I guess
um,
okay, you froze for a sec, but you're back. So we're good.
oh, okay, yeah. I thought you had started talking. I got
Oh no, it's fine. Well, I was about to, and then you froze, and then I waited. It's all good.
okay. All right,
Five
we're good.
five star production quality here. Um, so it's like when it comes to feelings, because I was actually kind of reflecting on this morning. Like your mental state really affects your emotional state, and vice versa. And it's difficult because you can kind of get caught in a trap mentally where things feel overwhelming or they seem worse than they do, and then you get very wrapped up in your feelings and they start kind of amplifying each other, and then you just kind of
hmm
like, I think you just reach a tipping point with it eventually where like it has to go back down, but it just builds and builds and builds until it reaches a point where it kind of climaxes and goes back down. um the struggle with that I find that I have is that it can take a lot longer than I would like it to reach that point. So I can get very wrapped up in things for maybe too long. Um, and yeah, it's just difficult from
Yeah.
that side of things. And it's easy to say, oh, like we were talking about last time, like, just look at things from an outside perspective and yada, yada, yada. But when it comes down to it and you're in that state of mind, um, it's really hard to have that conversation with yourself. And
Absolutely.
I kind of want to emphasize with this that that's okay. Um,
Yeah.
it's just important that you reach a point at some point that you become totally aware of the situation and you can step into that eventually, but it's not saying like right off the bat that you need to necessarily, like, as soon as something comes up, to be there and be like, okay, okay, me and myself team, how are we going to deal with this now?
Yeah,
Like,
and of
what do
course
we,
that's like ideal. It would be great if you could recognize when something arises and it triggers something in you not to react,
yeah,
and I think that's again the goal. But realistically, like you said, it's okay to have those feelings. I think it's important to validate that we have those, and I think that's what a lot of times why it drags on for so long is because we want to validate those feelings
yeah,
and not think that they're just based on something internally that triggered us or um yeah, I guess where you say you struggle because you hold on to it longer than it needs to.
yeah,
um I wouldn't say that mine hangs out for very long. I mean, sometimes it does, depends on how deep the wound that is triggering is, I guess. um but I did find myself in a bit of a situation this week. because I got a bit of a promotion at work, and so I've been put in more of a leadership role. And I find that I don't know if my teammates are challenging me a bit or testing me out, or um, if these situations are arising to give me a test, perhaps. But I just kept going over and over in my mind these situations that would have, and I was like getting angry with them. And I thought, who, why, what kind of, like, why would this happen? Why are they doing this? And I think my greatest weakness is that I I may hurt people in the process. So it might not last very long. While it is alive,
Yeah.
there's a chance that I can be very firm and very aggressive in the way that I express what I'm going through.
Yeah. Like, we've known each other a long time, and we get along about as much as we don't get along. You and I can be very opposite from each other, and like to tie some astrology into this, you are a Scorpio. Also, happy Scorpio season. I think
Hey,
that's officially today, I think. I don't know. I keep seeing Scorpio stuff on Instagram, so I just assumed.
yeah, yeah, it's 20 seconds, about that
Yeah.
time.
And I have a lot of Capricorn, so like we have that water and earth and we kind of butt heads a little bit. And like relating back to what you were saying about like your greatest weakness with that is like I've seen that in you as well, where like you get very wrapped up in your emotions and like your side of it, and like it's hard for you to kind of see sometimes the other side of things because you get very wrapped up in like your side of it. Um, and
Mm-hmm.
then I don't know what you have to say about me, but I think like I kind of have the same thing, but on like the different wavelength that I'm just like this big earthy goatee dickhead, and I'm just like I'm gonna headbutt you,
Yeah.
goat kick.
That's funny. We are very like similar in that stubbornness, but um hmm yeah, our approaches are a little bit different. We both are very like abrupt in the way we communicate things as well.
Yeah,
I feel like this is a very personal topic.
it is. It's weird, and like I now that I'm here and we're doing it, and I'm like this is uncomfortable, but
But
I
I
don't
think that's
know.
beauty in it.
Like, and I feel like we have no problem having this conversation. It's just having this conversation publicly
Yeah.
because this certainly isn't anything that we haven't talked about before. Like, this has been the conversation after every fallout we've had in the last decade,
Yes. Yeah.
which is probably way more than most people have in a decade, but
Hmm.
it is what it is.
It is what it is. It's fine. We're here.
We're
So,
here.
um, yeah. Well, coming. I just realized that there is a bug in the water I just drank.
Lovely.
Bugly. I think it's very important in those moments is that even though we don't always catch ourselves getting wrapped up in that emotion, and maybe it takes a little while before we get there, is to approach ourselves with loving kindness, and that softness, that like nurturing aspect of ourselves, our yin, if you will, uh, and understanding that this is part of the process.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean like making it okay to behave that way. It's just, yeah, that happened, and we recognize that. But in order to let it go and grow, you need to also embrace that part of yourself and be like, okay, like it's not because I'm a bad person, it's because experiences that have brought me to this point um, have been triggered in this moment,
Yeah.
and I need to deal with that now.
And another side to this too, because we this seems to have shifted from not just feelings but to dealing with feelings regarding other people, is that oftentimes the other person will feel the same way that you do. Maybe they don't express it the same way, because I've had many times where you and I have gotten into it, and like you're saying to me, like, you're not understanding my feelings, you're not hearing me. And I'm feeling the same way about you, but I don't express it in the same way you do, to just come right out and say that. Because I realize that, like, once we get to that point that we're not hearing each other, um, like, you really just need to take a step back from it. Because if I express that you're not hearing me too, and then you're expressing that I'm not hearing you, then it just kind of reaches, it's like hitting a wall.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, I find people get very wrapped up in, especially conflicts, that like they have to be right. And nobody really has to necessarily be right. Like, it's important that if it reaches a point that you're kind of having a conflict with someone and you can't reach a solution with it, and it's just butting heads with like no resolve, it's okay to kind of take a step back from that and say, hey, we need to take some time to ourselves to kind of sort out how we're feeling on our own, instead of just butting heads with each other. um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's probably the only reason why you and I still talk, is because we're fine with taking that extended break and then talking about it down the road, which usually ends up being
Whenever.
several
Yeah.
months. Sometimes it's like a week or two. It depends how bad the blow up is. But um, it's just like,
Right.
yeah, it's hard. And especially for people too, like, and another wound that a lot of people have is like abandonment. So, if you're dealing with someone who has an abandonment wound, and you are the person who decides to take that step back, like that can really trigger them for that too. But, again,
Absolutely. I was just about to do the same thing.
comes back to that, like, down the road, be able to have that conversation and say, hey, look, I know it hurt you that I stepped away, but I didn't see a solution otherwise at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're all just dealing with things the best way we know how to. um and for you and me both, we didn't grow up in situations where we were able to develop good, healthy coping mechanisms for things.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that's part of that, is trying to learn these things as an adult. It's much easier to learn these things as a child, because by the time you're adult, you have a belief system, you have kind of a layout for how to deal with things.
Right.
And
Childhood is like your foundation kind of thing.
yeah, and it's a lot of it's kind of letting go of everything you know and that you think you know, and kind of rebuilding on that foundation. And
Yeah.
you know
Well, even
make
not in rebuilding on that foundation, it's allowing your foundation to crumble and maybe rebuilding it from scratch.
yeah.
Sometimes you have to recognize that everything you've been taught is completely wrong.
Well, that's what I was
Or,
going to say too, is like getting everything right down to the baseline and reconstructing it.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about that last time too, the whole like ego death and ridding everything that we've been taught to believe is true and reconstructing something that makes sense for us as an individual.
Did you see that post I did about ego death? Because I kind of was like pondering it, and then I was like having a conversation with someone else, and then like I had like the thought on it. Um, Let me pull it up here and I'll read what it says. This might be relevant, it might not be, but we'll see. Okay, anyways, I
Right.
put
Yeah.
um ego death is reaching a
Oh,
point where you can admit to yourself that most of what you believe about yourself and the world around you is a lie that you created for yourself to form your identity.
yeah.
Yeah. And like that comes down to, yeah, like how you see things, how you cope with things, how you perceive things to be. Um,
How you interact with your environment, the people or situations.
like, even to go back to the drastic example we had last time of, if there's an alternate universe out there where a table and a toilet have their uses swapped. Um, and then you took that person and you brought them here, like it would be devastating to them to believe that, you know, we
One
did.
poop on a table. Yes.
Yeah,
We,
like if they came here and found out that you ate on the table, they would think it was the most disgusting thing ever, and then they'd be like, well, why would you shit in the toilet? You can drink out of that. Like,
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Nothing in this realm is right, wrong, good, bad, right? Like it just is what it is because of what we've established it to be, what we've judged it to be. And actually you inspired me quite a bit the last time we talked, when you had said, you know, everything is constantly being judged, but it's only okay to judge something if it's positively and not negatively.
yeah,
And like since then, I'm recognizing it all the time. Like, why is it such a bad thing if I should feel that something is less attractive than something else? It's just the way that I perceive it.
yeah,
It's it's art. It's interpreted by the viewer.
and that's it. And I mean, a lot of the things going on in the world now, you can relate that to as well, especially with, um, like everybody's so wrapped up in race and gender and all of these things. And we talk about equality, but then there's like almost this need to like give certain people special treatment because they fall under a certain category, which is still discrimination. It's just not a negative form of discrimination. Um, so, and
Mm-hmm.
then it kind of comes down to that, like what is kind of the proper way to approach that? And I don't
Yeah,
know.
this is
It's this,
yeah, like we're tiptoeing a bit into a touchy subject here because um it's hard to form an opinion on something that I can't personally understand. Like I'm not a person of color.
yeah,
I live in a country, you know. Um However, I will say sometimes I fondle with the idea that perhaps the issue is not the way we go about it, but perhaps it's personal healing that needs to be done. Because no matter how long we keep going, as long as we keep saying, like, we need to fix this, then we are acknowledging or we are putting emphasis on something that doesn't have to be there, just healing from within and then moving forward and not giving that the energy that it doesn't need, maybe.
yeah.
So if we
And
all stop putting energy into, this has been traumatizing and just do the internal work, then perhaps that thing would fade away.
yeah,
Whatever.
and like last week, I did an episode on transgenerational traumas, and a lot of that comes up. And I see that a lot here because we have a lot of Native American people
Mm,
um, in the area of the world where I live, and they're very fixated on what happened, you know, 200 years ago still. And yeah, it was shitty, but at the same time, it's like you have a conscious choice that you could decide to kind of give yourself a fresh start and let go of that trauma that you're holding on to. Because it's not even your trauma, it's somebody else's that you've carried on with you from your parents who took it on from their parents who took it on from their parents, and you were taught as a child to basically be traumatized for something that didn't directly affect you. Um, so it
mm,
comes down to that, a lot of that, making that personal choice of,
to heal.
yeah, like healing from it and letting it go and not passing it on to your children. And, when you talk about living in the moment, um, it's not necessarily about like, I'm going to disregard everything that's ever happened to me and pretend it didn't happen. but it's not letting it be a huge influence on you. And I struggle with a lot of this where, we need to remember what's happened in history, um, because people still just get so wrapped up in it now. And I think it's good to have the knowledge of what happened, but not taking it on personally.
Yeah, again, that's a really hard topic because I don't know. Although I will say, like, even from like the standpoint of being a woman, um, that there's been a lot that has been transferred onto me because I have we have a lot of single women in the family, and a lot of them carry a lot of anger about that, or from what that has meant. I know for a being a woman has had great impact on a lot of my experiences that I've had to heal from and is to continue to heal. And acknowledging that I'm going to continue having those experiences, but needing to learn what that means for me. And
Yeah.
I guess there's a lot of healing that goes to that too. Like, what it's almost like you're almost like a little bit bitter that you have to do this healing because of people that are no longer here,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
So I guess I can empathize by that standard.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel that way too, because it's like I kind of am a black sheep in my family in a lot of sense, and it's because I don't choose the same lifestyle and path that like everybody seems to choose.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I made a conscious decision at a young age that that's not what I was going to do and not what I wanted to do. And so be it. Like it's hard because I feel not attached to a lot of my family, but then it's kind of really looking out, what is your definition of family anyways? Like, is
Oh
it
yeah.
people you're biologically related to, or is it people that you can relate to on a higher level? Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's
You get
so
your love
it's
from your comfort.
yeah, it's difficult, but I don't know. A lot of it just really with everything, I think, just comes back to awareness. So being aware of how you're thinking and how you're
Yeah,
feeling, and really evaluating like what's serving you and what isn't. Um,
absolutely. Because this is our life to live.
yeah.
And like this is all going to tie back into like a lot of the thoughts that I've been having recently. But yeah, how like you said, it is a choice to an extent. Like it's a choice to keep working towards that healing, keep working towards that um, uh, like peace, that grace. Because I think a lot of times we often choose unhappiness. We choose to feel like, or we hold on to things that make us feel sad. Like, oh, like I can't. Oh, how was your day? I'm doing great, except my hip hurts. Good old hip. Well, we hold on to that because again, it's part of our identity. But also, it's like we are so afraid of just being happy regardless of all the crap that's going on and whatever it is that you feel might be holding you back. You can still choose to be happy on a regular basis, but I think that something that holds us down just enough is comfort food. It's like that
Yeah.
anchor. There's less to lose if when you're down here than if you were just completely happy, childlike happiness. Then there's a lot more to lose.
Yeah. And there is. It's the same thing with um relationships, and we can tend to have a lot of self-sabotaging behaviors, and have a lot of reasons why things don't work out, but like in our mind we're not really aware of what we're doing to stop ourselves from having a healthy relationship with somebody else, because we're afraid of losing that after we have it. Or even if it's a complete unknown, we're just afraid of that unknown of what is that going to be.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's certainly had another thought. I don't know where it went, but it's difficult. It really is difficult dealing with a lot of that stuff. And even beyond the happiness too, like finding I don't want to say I want to redefine what happiness is, but what I would like to see is that it's not, it's like the word love where it can be too broad. And like even if you can't find happiness in what you're doing or where you are, be content at the minimum.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
a lot of that, like regardless of what's going on, like you said, your hips sore, um, you hear a lot of people, it's common, people talking about how there's not enough hours in the day and they're so busy and stressed out. And, uh, you know, it's always something, like everybody has something, I guess. Um, and it's finding that time and space to just be content with your existence in general, like regardless of what's happening or not happening. Um, be okay with just being here for a bit.
Yeah. I mean, it absolutely breaks my heart that I go to work and I like make the intention of being a little bit more for people. Like I, to make my day better, I just try to have the utmost fun that I can in any little way that I can, just to have fun. And it breaks my heart that customers will come and be like, "Wow, aren't you happy? That's so sweet. I'm happy for you." Like everyone could be doing this. We could all be having fun all the time. Like, why do we have to be miserable just because we're at work? This is part of our thing, and we've already proven that once everyone doesn't have work, we lose our minds. So, like,
Yeah, and it does so. It comes down to your perception going into it, and for a lot of people, like it becomes habit that, you know, going to work is a miserable thing that you have to do to survive, and, regardless of what's really going on, or it's about your thoughts, it's about your perception of it, and that influences how you feel. So like you can go to work with the intention of having the best day that you possibly can every day, or you can go to work and let yourself be miserable and look at everything as being kind of shitty. And it's, if you change your perception to looking at it as, I'm gonna have the best day I possibly can, even when you have a quote unquote shitty day, because stuff does happen, it doesn't seem as bad, and then it just becomes easier to
yeah,
deal with things. I was gonna say, like, if you are going into a job and you can't bring yourself to a point where you can let yourself have the best day possible, then look into getting a new job. Because there are sometimes you do need to change your environment. And I'm not saying, be aware of the habits that you have and try not to take those into the next place. But, sometimes you just have to accept that, like, you know, your your job is maybe shit, not the best place for you to be, and you need something different.
yeah. And I think, and again, that being self-aware will help you differentiate whether it's your job or your perspective on it. Because I know I struggled a lot at the beginning of this pandemic. I had lost my job working in the hospital as an addiction worker, and now I'm a cashier at the grocery store that I started out when I was 19. So it took a long time before I had settled in and being like, I can't keep holding on to this idea that this is means anything about me or it changes my value whatsoever. Um, that this is where I am, and I'm just so grateful to even have a job right now.
Yeah,
So when there was an opportunity for promotion, I said, "Let's go for it. Why not? It'd be great, some good experience."
yeah,
I
no, and it
mean, I've
definitely
applied to lots
is.
of jobs, and no one's called. So this is where
Yeah,
I need to be right now.
Yeah, no. And that's just kind of the way it is there. It's like,
Don't blame it on Windsor.
it's true though. You can apply for like 200 jobs and nobody calls you and you're like, "Why?" I don't know. It's it's an interesting place.
It's definitely an interesting city.
Yeah. All right, what else was
Okay. Yeah.
what else was on the list for today?
Um, I wish I could remember the other epiphany I had, but I wanted to come back to that 5D thing, and I hope
Okay,
you don't mind. I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant here.
that's
So
fine.
cut me off and make a comment whenever you're ready.
Well, your internet does a plenty good job of cutting you off anyways, so let's hope your internet connection stays stable long enough.
Yeah, right. Okay, so I'm just going to start this off by reading what I wrote the other night while
Okay.
I was laying in bed staring at the ceiling for like 3 hours. Okay, I shouldn't say it that way. What actually, I was laying in bed, just like contemplating stuff and thinking like what should I do tonight? I kind of don't want to do anything. I just want to lay in bed. But it was like 8 p.m. and so I was like, oh, I'll go get my laptop. I never use it. I brought it into my room. I opened it up and I just stared at the background. And the background is like these snowy mountains with pine trees all coming up. And I just stared like, wow, that's so beautiful. Like, is that Photoshop? Does that mountain actually exist somewhere? I thought, music, you've traveled, sceneries like this actually exist in real life. I thought, like, well, okay, this is where I'm just gonna read to you what I wrote at this
Okay.
point because this is how it transferred. Art is interesting. Art is nearly in the realm of spirituality because it's not really there. Just like constellations in the sky, we've just created it. And then I wrote, is life a reflection of ourselves? Life is our own creation. Perhaps throughout time, we've mentally manifested the entire universe. And as a collective, we never knew. This pandemic gave us the opportunity to feel that connection. For the very first time in all of history, this level of consciousness was aware of itself. Each manifested being became aware at the same topic at the same time, and perhaps not experiencing the same physical struggle, but a similar range of emotions, your intuition, your guide in your own realm of existence, and that range of emotions all being experienced at the same time created a wave. And so in this like moment of realization that everything that exists is literally just a reflection of itself, because I'm looking at this mountain and trees thinking, oh, that's so beautiful. Like, how gorgeous is that? But that's only a judgment that I've made. It doesn't actually exist as beauty. It is literally just the planet doing what it's doing naturally. Um, and just like that, just like we see each other and things around us as beautiful, those are also just being created, the universe just doing its own thing. And we are part of that consciousness. I don't know if I'm making sense. This all like I can see it clearly in my mind of how it was almost like I had seen like the earth itself being a consciousness and it being us being like the projections of its reality. But like let's just say all of our minds have been like condensed into one little ball. Okay, I'm going back to the Big Bang. This is going bad. Okay.
No, it's fine. Keep going.
uh yeah. So this is where I find myself getting a little bit crazy when I have these moments of realization and I just start writing stuff. Yeah, so like in that sense, perhaps we have increased on a level of consciousness. Um, so from going from a 3D dimension to a 5 dimensional existence or consciousness, perhaps this is a step towards that possibly being a thing. So, like, imagine if the 2D would be where humans didn't exist and the earth could reflect itself as animals or trees because they weren't self aware, but they still existed and had a life. And so the 3D would be humans aware of the surroundings. And now it's like we've all become very aware of the entire planet at once. And that has connected us intuitively, pulling us closer towards 4 5D. I'm no doctor. I'm just pulling magical streams out of my butthole. Um, but maybe it's that could be a thing. Once we become so aware of like what is actually happening, then we move up to the next realm, and perhaps everything that we've ever known to be true as humans will no longer be vital to what we need to do in order to grow even bigger.
Well, and that's kind of my thought is that like what would happen because to talk about raising the earth's vibration and um I mean to some degree the way it's expressed on the internet I think it's bullshit, but I kind of understand like the concept of it from like my own perspective. But it's like, what if this wave of energy just like hit us, just went across the earth, and everybody just stopped caring about everything that doesn't actually matter? And I mean, simultaneously, everybody. Like, if this happened, there would be no governments, there would be no politics, there would be no borders, there would be no discrimination, there would be like if everything we just hold on to as part of our like you could call it the ego death because it's realizing that all these things that we think about and we process as part of our identity doesn't really matter if we all just went through this instant loss of identity and we just worked like became focused on just existing and like it just came down to does everybody have food? Does everybody have, shelter? Does everybody have water? Um,
And if they don't, can the rest of the community get together and help them out?
well, and that's what I'm saying. It would be like where we wouldn't even think about it. And I thought back and I'm like, how did we, like, what was the tipping point that got us to building the system that we currently have? And I figure what probably happened is that there was one family that didn't have enough, and there was a family that had more than enough, and the family that didn't have enough went to the family that had more than enough and said, can you help me? And then that's where greed kind of came from, because then that person started thinking, well, what can I get in return for helping this person? And then that's where that exchange comes from, and it's like, yeah, I have enough wood and chicken for the winter, but what are you going to give me in return for it? What are you going to do for me? And instead of having that selflessness of just saying, you know, I have enough to take care of my family and theirs for the winter, it's going, what can I get in return for doing this for them? And then it's like, and I mean, this is going, like, in my mind, this would go way, way, way far back, like, not even like before Jesus far back, like I'm like 100,000 years ago kind of thing.
Yeah.
And like that kind of would have been that first spark of, I guess, that kind of like greed setting in where it eventually grew to kind of becoming like it's a normal thing now. Like it's normal to just assume that you're not going to be able to receive anything from anybody else unless you give something in return. Like, and I don't know. It's just it's strange to me how like we shifted to that at some point where like if we just had never developed those thoughts of what can I get out of this, like how different would things be now? I don't know.
I'm very intrigued by it because I found that a lot of people have associated that mentality with the Americans, not
Yeah.
just today, but as well as Canadians. You know, the Americas. I've been told by a lot of people who are not from the area say, you know, everyone here can be very selfish, you know, like back where they came from, it'd be like your neighbors were your friends. You looked out for your neighbors. Never one had a responsibility or due diligence to make sure that everyone had enough food. Or there wasn't even a question like, do you need something? Or maybe someone's family member had passed away. Everyone in the neighborhood would get together and go check in on that neighbor on a regular
Yeah.
basis. That's
E-
very hard to find around
Even
here.
a good example of this that I feel has even shifted in my lifetime is childcare. Like when I was a kid, nobody ever worried about having someone to keep an eye on their children or having to pay like because like I don't know how it is in Windsor still, but like out here like daycare is like more than I make in a month. Um, it's insane what the child care cost is out here, and there's very much that lack of community where like you know if I was a kid, my parents either couldn't be home or had to go do something. Um, there was somebody within like the 1 block radius of my house who could keep an eye on me for a couple hours till they got back. Like it was never really even a question. And it's like, you can't do that in your community anymore.
That's definitely part of what I know. It's almost like that aspect is being extra emphasized in this whole COVID thing. Um, Not that I want to give energy to that either, um, but it's something that I want to pull away from. I may have mentioned to you before that I want to start a group where we just do like random acts of kindness.
Yeah.
Sorry. Um, like I want to get a like an activist group together. We don't have very many activist groups around here, and it's literally just to create that sense of community. So whether it's cleaning up certain neighborhoods or getting random people in the streets to participate in activities, or including painting or obstacle courses, drawing chalk down the road, just good messages, leaving notes in people's mailboxes. Um, I I'm trying to collect people to be able to do all these things just so we can reconnect people and keep up this whole random acts of kindness on a monthly basis.
Yeah. And I feel like that is something that Windsor definitely needs because like I even noticed such a huge difference in the public interactions I have with people here versus there. Like it's kind of normal here to like say hello to people when you walk by them on the street, and there um it's very like when you walk by a stranger on the street, it's like a very standoffish experience. And I
Yep.
noticed it like when I was there last year, like I really noticed the difference because I've really gotten the habit of embracing like being, you know, polite and friendly with strangers here, and it was weird going back there and not being able to do that. Where it's like, you know, just keep your head down and keep yourself because there's like this fear of like what the other person might do to you if you look them in the eyes, you know.
Well, frankly, they probably wouldn't do much.
No, in most cases, but with Windsor being on the border with Detroit, like you see a lot of that influence where it's like, oh my God, is this person gonna mug me? Are they gonna shoot me? Like, I don't know. You're like, but in most cases, like even in Detroit, as much as it's something that happens every day, like in the grand scheme of things, it's a pretty rare occurrence that like somebody just shoots somebody. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know. That's a whole different. Detroit could be its own podcast episode, but we won't go there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like you see a lot more of the American influence in Windsor, though I find, and it's
Absolutely.
yeah,
Even in the way that we measure shit, like grams, kilograms, and pounds. I can't keep up. Or Fahrenheit and Celsius. I use them both. It's ridiculous.
centimeters and inches.
What? No, no, we use them both. That's fine. Like then it becomes a wacky wavy inflatable arm flailing tube man.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. All right. I think this episode's officially over.
Oh God, please. Well, it's been a pleasure sitting here and chatting with you, Steve.
Well, thank you, Music. All right. Well, we'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Thanks for coming on.
All right. Take
All
care,
right,
Peter.
Peter.
Bye.
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 Meow.